Just trying to be comfortable.
Okay. I don't have to do anything with this. Hi. Okay, great. So let's call this meeting to order at 7:03 on this, the 23rd of January, 2020. Welcome back, everybody. Who's here? Anna Carver,
Rick Geiger.
Jessica Giles.
Vicki Romano.
John Albrecht.
With us also is Steph Bailey, who is a planning board alternate, and Morgan Wright, who is deputy clerk. Excellent. So first order of business, we are approximately 1 minute behind our schedule on the first order of business. Here from the October 24th meeting, which was also a significant meeting. So make sure that you look down the motions and everything looks spelled the way you think it should be, and check the vote at the very bottom.
I confess I haven't seen them. They came today and the.
Yep, and they're in a stack right under your agenda there. Your hand is on it.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so we can take a moment. It's important that everyone feels comfortable with this section of the minutes. Do you not? Oh, okay, great.
Now I.
Oh, no, I've read them. There you go. It's okay.
You want any of my papers?
No, I. Oh, we're live streaming right now. So we had, do you feel it? The
No makeup?
electricity. Right. Do kids get the reference? I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. Do kids get that anymore? Probably not. Okay, said it anyway. So what that means is that it's available for live, like public consumption now, and it saves what historically we had done is recording it and then uploading this large audio video file, but it will still be archived. And, great. And I'm speaking now to, where's the camera? Okay, so I'm speaking to Village Trustee Ben Carver, who is responsible for making sure the public has full access. He's taken on the burden.
It's like, wait, he's not here. For sure.
What did I just say, Carver? Too many Bens. Ben. Sorry,
Is there a resemblance?
only in their commitment to this village.
That's the resemblance. Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
So when anyone feels ready, we could move to approve these minutes unless anyone has any,
To approve the minutes of the last meeting.
correct, of
I
October
would move
24th.
that we do approve those.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of October 24th are approved. And then, so here we are with this great opportunity to sort of basically open up the board to talk about things that have been maybe loosely mentioned in past meetings, but some that we have identified. And we do have still the section of new business. So since Ben is here, we can talk about these two items and then maybe invite him to speak with us about CPZR before 7:30, and we can still reserve any other new items that didn't make it to the agenda. But I just wanted to bring to our attention the bridge project on Cemetery Road, and make sure as a planning board, we're all aware that what's happening is that bridge is being replaced. And I spoke with Michelle Wright, who is she's the grant administrator. And I just wanted to give a little bit of background about what, and again, I might be saying things we all know, but I'll just say it. So the county owns the bridge. The county has encouraged the town to solicit grant funds. The grant funds come from the federal government level and then get filtered down to the New York State Department of Transportation. The town has said, great, we will act as the grant administrator. So, and then Michelle Wright is in that position. So she's really the direct liaison to get all this done. And so I spoke with her on the phone the other day to say, at what point do we get to talk about design? And I think that was a point that Vicki brought to the meeting one day when you referenced the bridges in Ithaca, which, while they're very functional and one might appreciate them for their brutalist construction with just the gun slot view, maybe that doesn't actually benefit the overall aesthetic of the place. And that and so there's that, because it separates you from the beauty of the stream as well, I would add, as separating us, the individuals, from our place on the planet. So that spurred me to ask, at what point could we have any say in that, and recognizing all those layers of what I said. It's not a town project. It's a county project, but based on these grant funds that have New York State Department of Transportation. We may not be able to be super prescriptive, but I wanted to see if there was any interest amongst this board of sort of putting out a common voice to Michelle that she can take to the powers that be, in addition to the public hearing that hasn't quite yet been set, but where we could also make our voice heard.
Thank you for theoretically mentioned that,
I think you did. That was a great point.
but I feel, for instance, that the bridge rails that we have, our own stream, our beautiful river running through the middle of our village, that the handrails are exceptionally and singularly ugly. They're kind of a 30s modernistic. They don't work with the bridge itself. They don't give you a view to the water. They're just
Are we talking about right on Main
on
Street?
our main street,
Yeah.
both sides. And I convinced Board of Public Works, at least, that were in charge of it, to paint it a reasonable color, the green. They did something like pink or I don't know what, but something really awful that would jump into your face. So I said, at least if we have to use these rails because of some other codes and laws,
Sure.
what have you, but at least diminish them by a reasonable color. They did do that. They did do that. And I think in this other case, being as small as it is, but it's a contributing stream
It's lovely down Yeah.
that is, runs in back of a very pretty neighborhood and empties down into the lake.
there. And we have the sidewalk there now. The sidewalk project goes to there.
Yes.
So it's a definite,
So
Part of our
what it
walking.
looks like should really be in contradiction to and not against.
yeah.
And I don't know exactly what role we could play there, but I would encourage that we
I think,
keep it.
yeah.
And nobody comes roaring through there at any
Wait, is it
great
the one on
speeds.
Lake
It's a very
Street,
sharp turn.
Yes, Lake.
Yeah, Lake and
Cemetery.
Cemetery.
Yeah, just some questions. Because I agree that if we can have input, we should. But I don't want to spend a lot of time agonizing over this if somebody's going to tell me, oh, well, you don't have anything to say, and
Right.
we have no mechanism for hearing you. And by the way, the engineer's going to decide this. So whose public hearing is it?
So the way it will be is it'll be like,
Is it the county?
yes,
So the county is holding a public hearing.
I believe. Let me say yes with 75% assuredness.
Okay,
but
we need-
let's
well,
get
we
back to
need- yeah.
Michelle and figure out. It has not yet been scheduled.
Right, we should find that out.
Yep.
Because, you know, if it's the actual legislators who are holding the public hearing, which I doubt, at the county, it's probably the Public Works, administrator or
Oh,
something.
yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
know.
just wondering who it is we're actually trying to talk to in the public hearing, because that'll give us who the actual decision makers are.
Yep.
And then beyond that, whether the design is anywhere in anyone's purview but the funders. you
And I
know.
also don't know.
And if it is, then great. But if it isn't, actually, it would just be like we're kind of flapping in the wind.
Yeah, though here's me pretending that like, oh, hey, in case you haven't thought of it, is there a railing that still meets your economic and functional realities that's a little bit more beautiful? Like, please
Mhm.
know that officially as a planning board of the village, we would like for you to
Sure.
find that.
Yeah, no, that would make sense for sure. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do something like
But
that.
I don't know how
But it
much.
would be good to know too, what is the line of authority for
Yeah,
this? And
and the best way
how
to-
can we, impact that?
I think you can express a desire without being specific. We want an iron bridge, an iron,
Right, it doesn't have to be
you
super
can,
prescriptive.
you can give them a performance criteria, take advantage of seeing the water from
Yeah,
a car and leave it and let them.
Transparency there for so many people that actually
yeah,
use it as pedestrians would be a very nice way to relate to that little bridge. It's a little bridge, it's
Yeah.
a small stream, and a aesthetically pleasing solution would be perfect.
and again, like in communication with Michelle, this whole process for her has been lovely, like there's no strife. So we certainly aren't trying to introduce any, we just, in case it hasn't occurred to anyone to think about that aspect, we just wanted to see. So she encouraged me to send her an email. So maybe what I'll do is just compose a little thing and let's see that, and we can email communicate about it, that you feel comfortable with the general language. And then let's also ask her. She said any questions, to include any questions. So those are good there
Okay.
about who's hosting it. But if you think of others,
Yeah, one other major point there is that Andy Moore, who lives at the
Yeah.
end of all that, actually maintains and trims back the bushes and maintains the quality of the running off and down of the stream. He does all that free as a volunteer. So there are people involved in maintaining it,
yeah.
which is a plus.
So this is a beloved bridge that the neighborhood is taking care of, the
Yeah.
area would
Yeah,
like
he
to.
maintains the stream on both ends and clips and, does what he has to do. And he's done it for a number of
Let's use
years.
the word stewardship even, that's nice.
Yeah, that word is not used often enough.
Okay, great. Then I'll do that. I will move forward with,
Find a role for Duran Van Dorn.
I know I was like somewhere between brutalist pure functionality and Durand building the whole bridge. I'm sure we can find.
And Duran, I could talk to him this afternoon, he's doing just fine.
Oh, good.
Good.
Okay.
And his wife said that when he drives way too fast or way too slow, means he's fine.
Okay. Okay, great. So that's all for that bit. Ben, do you wanna, so I'd like to invite, Ben Darfler, who is village trustee and who is chair of the CPZR, which is the, Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Revision Committee, which is comprised of, a village trustee and also our zoning and codes officer, and then members of the community.
As
So-
well as our boards,
What's that?
as well as our boards, so staff sits on there, and,
As well as our board?
the village boards, our village boards.
Yeah.
Planning board is zoning board.
What? Anyway, so the point being that it's.
Representatives of.
Okay, yeah, it's
Yeah.
inclusive of the community. It's largely made up of community members, isn't it? It's like, are you still 10?
About half.
Okay,
Half, recognizing that everyone on this board is part of the community as well, but there is about half who are people.
That's
are
great.
Representatives of the board.
versus
board,
people with no official
zoning board,
function.
and
Yeah.
versus community members who have, yes, official appointment.
Great, and so I think we're aware of it since we're streaming here. The purpose is that the village has decided that it's good to redo our comprehensive plan, and associated with that, of course, is the zoning code. And so those things are getting updated. And I think that we had as a board just some questions about how we might be most useful, when is a chance for us to participate, what is the process, and also just a check-in. So I don't have anything formulated in my mind other than to maybe give a brief, you can say a few words about where you are, and then let's ask some questions as a board. Does that suit everybody? Yep, okay.
So my timeline is a little fuzzy, but we've been working, most of last year. We had culminating primarily in the meeting in November, which everyone hopefully was well aware of and invited to. At that meeting, we kind of gave a review of where we've been over the past 6 to 12 months or whatever it is that we've been running. We reviewed an updated vision for the comprehensive plan, which is largely unchanged, some very small tweaks coming out of that meeting, but we did get some feedback on that. And the rest was kind of an explanation of the process as well as opening up a questionnaire for the community. So we've had a questionnaire circulated online and print copies that can be picked up in the village. We kind of closed that at the beginning of January, but after further discussion and with the state of the village coming up at the end of the month, we decided to reopen that and reoffer it for another kind of final round around the state of the village. So folks on the board have not had a chance to give input on that. So Nikki has a copy right there. There is a link is on the website under the plans and vision committee page of the website, so you can do that online. You can also come in and ask Tammy, and she can print you out a copy. You fill it out.
You know what? I wonder if we could make a quick link on do we have the page on the website exactly? We do. Could we make a link to that on our page? Because people, I think, are paying attention to what the planning board does. Let's do that. Let's just out there.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
We'll probably keep that up until early-ish February, so.
Okay.
I find a
Thanks.
major need to add something to this questionnaire. I reread rather carefully today, not in 15 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, our previous comprehensive plan. The saddest thing about our previous comprehensive plan, I thought it was well written, it was well distributed. What I found extremely sad about it is how little the village was able, when did this come up, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
10? About 10 years ago. Okay, a decade. Of all the input and all the research and all the requests and all the ideas, almost nothing happened that was mentioned here by the citizens of this community, which makes you feel going into yet another one a little discouraged, more than a little discouraged. This had some great ideas of what people wanted in this village, how they viewed their future a decade ago. You know, what they wanted, what they didn't want. I read it fairly carefully. And, even a decade ago, yes, a restoration of the beautiful older buildings downtown. It's gone exactly the opposite way. This holds true of any number of other things. This was a very thorough, in-depth document. And when you read it and when you see where we are today, this was a waste of time for everybody, whoever wrote this and whoever responded to it. So not to delve on that endlessly, although I do find that kind of sad, I would say that unless, indeed on the new one, if we don't put in what we need to do, as I always held to be a slightly, I hope I'm still right, enlightened community, if we don't address climate change in Trumansburg, where are we going to address it?
So you're proposing a question?
I am
to-
saying that if we don't address some of the critical, dangerous, way out there things that are happening globally, that we're seeing all around us, it hasn't hit here yet, but it might tomorrow.
Well, it is.
In other words, I would like to see a few areas here that deal with where we might be heading. And I'm only going to follow this up with somebody just gave me I just want to follow this up because there's things to be taken that are very easy. Somebody gave me for my Christmas present the Sierra Club membership. And their simple one-page thing of what a human being can do on this planet today to change things for the better is so encouragingly simple. It gives you step by step, eat less, plant some trees. All I hear in Trumansburg is the chainsaws. And I called Don Ellis today, the former board member here. And I said, you've been appointed for a year now. What have you done about what you're doing about tree planting, or where are they going to go, or which ones are going to be saved, which ones are being pretty much nada. And I said, it's not my fault. We just talk about it and it doesn't seem to particularly go anywhere. So I would highly encourage, there are many, many lists, but if a enlightened community, as I hope we are, the Sierra Club, it's called the checklist of simple steps you can take to fight climate change. And it's like 20 different
That's
items.
awesome.
And they're excellent.
Yeah.
They're excellent.
Um,
And if we don't do it, who's going to do it?
I wonder if there's a way that, like, because it was referenced in our conversation, can a document referenced in our conversation get a link?
I don't know. I was just thinking that I actually liked the questionnaire that went out because it was so open-ended. So that
You could add that in.
you can add practically anything. If you wanted to go through the comprehensive plan and on that questionnaire, point out the things that haven't been done, it seems to me the questionnaire is
Well,
perfectly
yeah, what was
adapted to
discouraging
that.
to me from
Yeah.
what the village responded to and what they said and what they wrote 15 years ago. And, underlined all these different things, the various transportation methods and we
Yeah.
need
Well, I
jobs in the
think- I'm
village,
not
et cetera, et cetera.
I'm not saying those aren't valid, but yeah, I'm saying that I think the questionnaire is
Seemed to open.
really well,
You feel that it's open enough to,
it's totally open.
um,
In fact, I think, some people, I think, might have reacted, oh my God, it's not a specific question here, but gosh, you can bring up practically anything in that and still be within the scope of the request.
okay.
I love those kind of questionnaires, I tend to go on too long, but I think it's almost an invitation to bring up exactly the things you're saying and give examples like the Sierra Club statement. Friends of the Earth has got a similar thing.
You can even attach it.
Even the
Okay.
Securities and Exchange Commission.
Well, then,
believe it or
could I
not.
beg to ask that we would take this as one of many and just add that on, or should I find the right location
I think
for it?
that, I think that.
Yeah, you can feel free to fill that out, and I think it's saying
I
that.
can write all this.
No,
No, attach it.
Oh,
Circle it.
Right, in your own words, feel free to fill out the questionnaire, and then please do attach those, yeah. and-
Yeah.
and-
This is one of many environmental groups, but I think that as a village, it comes upon us to respond to some of these things. And the sooner the better.
I also feel like it should be said that the comprehensive plan is a vision statement. Like it's not, it's not giving you step-by-step instructions of how things need to be done and when things need to be done, or if things are even going to be done. It's just saying, this is our wish list. If we could have everything that we ever wanted, this is what we'd want. So just because you don't see all of the things in the old comprehensive plan, being acted on, doesn't mean that it's not a worthwhile document.
It may mean that people thought about it, but then they themselves did not want to act in that
Well,
direction.
yeah, and I mean, we know, like, we've been working on one project for how long?
Right, 2 years.
Yeah,
3 years.
3 years. So if things take a long
And
time to
counting.
get done.
My discouragement, however, came in because it's 15 years. And there were very specific items mentioned here of what people living in this village really looked forward to maybe seeing. And I don't see even 10% of that materializing. That was my
Kind of on us.
discouragement.
Like, aren't we the ones that are,
Well, we, the villagers.
Yeah.
And what we choose to then construct based on this vision and then the code that allows us to enact the vision.
In other words, this was a very in-depth earlier version of the comprehensive plan 15 years ago. And there were very specific articles and paragraphs written of what people really wanted to see happen in Trumansburg. And I read it carefully today or a few days ago. And I'd say less than 2%.
So I think that this is a bit of you have a topic that I think that you might bring up on new business that will lead into a specific thing that you're thinking about with historic districts. And so that's super valid, and let's recognize that. And I think that Hannah, you're right, that, I mean, it's on us in terms of, as a board, when we have projects in front of us, this is the vision document, this is the mission, vision, value statement, then the code that we are working with. But if nobody wants to do projects and they just keep doing the same things that are still there but aren't progressive, like, right, nothing happens and no change happens. But I think that Vicky is sitting on a really juicy topic that we'll get to, I promise, tonight.
Okay.
So do we have any more specific questions for Ben about the process or how? Yeah.
I'd like to say just a couple things. I hear everything you're saying, and we really encourage you to respond via the questionnaire so that we can actually include those. Many, many people called out historical homes as a wonderful benefit of the village, and that is not gone unnoticed, and that is something we're going to discuss and talk about. What do we want to do about that? You know, we have them, we'd like to keep them. How do we want to approach that? What things should we be putting in the next phase? So these are definitely conversations that are being brought up and continue to be brought up. And the more you can please, bring that feedback into the whole mix through the questionnaire, and that'll be.
It's documented, it's part of
the rest of the timeline, but there'll be many other ways for input throughout.
If I could answer that very briefly, I think the historic homes is a perfectly valid concept, and we have quite a few already designated. And we have some grand mansions and some smaller, more modest homes and so forth. What is key and critical to us is the commercial district. If that becomes a historic district, we're not going to have to see the horrors of what has happened the last 2-3 years. I won't mention names, and I don't have to, I won't mention names, but to take our beautiful cast iron columns that were all cast here locally. Now that's history. They were made right at Gregg Ironworks over on the street that Ruthie Kahn lives on. That's special. The foundations, portions of the footers are still there. We made plows first, and then after that, they went into other metallic substances and what they could cast and do. It was, they were renowned for what they did. And we have the entire left side, if you come, if you head north, is all that. There's very few villages that can sport this. And so we have somebody that comes along and paints 3-4 of them dark brown, as I mentioned at the last meeting, it's like a funeral parlor, and completely eliminated all of the specialness of that. You lose that, what are you looking at? You might as well cover it in plywood. So,
And you've got a particular eye towards that. That's something I've heard you bring up a couple of times, and I would have not otherwise understood or noticed them necessarily. So again, please do put those in the questionnaire, bring them to our attention.
So again, it's the notion of now it's an official record. It's a document that then the committee, and it's important. I want to make sure you feel comfortable speaking as you're an alternate, so you can't vote if we make a vote, unless I run out real quick.
I think the feedback that I am hearing from being on this planning board is that the previous comprehensive plan, which was in 2008, so 12 years ago,
it's getting younger by the minute.
it was really great, really well done, but it did lack some of the specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, with timeframe goals, which is a priority of the consultant that we've hired. And so they want the next comprehensive plan to be a little bit different, to have some more of those specific goals that we can kind of check off 10 years from now. How did the village do in accomplishing
Right, and
that?
so also the notion of that it's not just the planning board, work, it's the village's work, it's the trustees' work, is changing the fire station, is making a park, is doing anything in keeping with our comprehensive plan.
And I think they have an understanding of the importance of having those specific things in the comp plan, because that will help us receive more funding, both state and federal funding, which we can then use to accomplish those goals. So it really seems very purposeful.
Like beautification plans.
Yeah. it feels really good and hopeful and not sad. And
Yeah.
I think all of the feedback from these surveys, or the questionnaire, I should say, will also be attached to it like the last time. So it feels like a really good process. and-
I'm looking forward I completely agree, I'm looking forward to the form that they've kind of proposed to us for how the action plan will kind of fall out, is more of a spreadsheet of sorts of, here's the action plan, here's what group or entity or types of entities might attack that, here's where they could go for funding, and so on and so forth. So I think one thing I completely agree with you, the current comprehensive plan lacks that kind of accountability. It's one thing to say, we as a community would like X to happen, but does that fall on the village board? Does that fall on a local nonprofit or a
It's all
local,
of it,
just
right?
community organization that's not even formed in anything? Does it fall on a particular planning board? Like, it was very unclear, and when things are unclear like that, they tend to, fall through. And then just as an aside, we as a committee have gone through and looked at all of the goals. That's a little higher level than the specific action plans, but we went through and a surprising amount have been substantially or partially accomplished, or at least for our committee felt no longer particularly relevant. Things change over 10 years. I'm sure there are some things that were very important that have been missed and should be carried forward, and we did identify a handful of those as well, at least the goal level. The more I've been digging into the comprehensive plan, the more I've been really impressed with what's in there and what we can do to handle.
Rick actually had wanted to say something. Did you still get to say it?
Oh, sure, I always want to say something.
I know, but he had, and then we.
Well, okay, a couple things. I think the whole idea of the comprehensive plan, I think the Department of Environmental Quality has a bunch of documents about what's a comprehensive plan. The main thing about it is it's a aspirational document, right? It's not an actionable document because the political forces are the ones that have to make things happen. And that's part of the problem with when you've got a 10-year or 12-year or whatever time frame on a comprehensive plan, is that the people who enact it probably aren't going to be around, when it comes, or significant numbers of them might not be around when it comes time to actually take action. It requires political will to make things happen. And, I don't know who was on the board of trustees 12 years ago. My guess is there's not a single person still on the board who was on the board then, and probably same in the town, probably
Right.
same in the county. That's why things don't happen. It's people who wrote the thing and, were living it, loving it, they're gone in a few years and before anything can be done. So I don't think it's necessarily, I don't think it's sad. I think it's political. And I do think there are ways to put things in the comprehensive plan. And it sounds like you're doing it with the help of the consultant, to provide, not particular political accountability, but organizational accountability, so that there's some continuity to how this plan gets implemented. And I think that's the only way to make a plan like that actually ever, the pieces of it, other than maybe a few that are easy to accomplish in a short period of time, actually happen. So that's just my general thing. The second thing I wanted to say was, I went into the meeting you had with the consultant, the public, sort of, I don't know what you call those now, information session. Okay, whatever everybody's doing those now. So anyway, it was good. But I remember the mayor at the beginning was very firm that he had created a strong timeline and that he was going to hold your feet to the fire. The first thing you said was that the timeline is getting fuzzy. And that
My recollection of when exactly we started, because it took a little while for us to kind of get up and running.
Yeah.
The timeline, so it's more a backward looking timeline, fuzzy. The
Okay.
timeline going forward, in my mind, is still not quite set in stone. I am working with a consultant to kind of get a better sense of it. But a near and midterm timeline is we're looking to have a second public meeting in March. That would be to have a draft of many of the goals and strategies underneath those and action items underneath those, and it wouldn't be fully fleshed out, but it would be enough there that people can react to and give us feedback on. It would also include the first 3 chapters of the current draft of the next comprehensive plan, which is more just kind of an outline. The first 2 are kind of preamble mostly. The third one is kind of existing conditions, so it's everything about the various kind of different neighborhoods we have, the economic situation, demographics, school, environmental, so forth, kind of broken out and written down. So that's what we're looking for in March, and then I think a few months past that, we're looking at having a final draft for review, and at that point, it would be then passed on to the village board as a, here, what do you think of it? And then at that point, it would go through more kind of review by the village board. Should it be passed, it's adopted, that's a law, there's a public hearing, there's also a environmental review of it, SEEKR, as you're all familiar with now. Will have to be reviewed just to ensure that we didn't say, like, let's go build heavy industrial on the creek or so forth. And so that's kind of the timeline for the comprehensive plan. I think gets us to mid-year-ish, maybe a little later, because it's already wanting to. The zoning is where I'm a little less clear at what kind of time frame our consultant has kind of in mind around that. I think they're under the impression that that might move a little more quickly, having fully digested kind of the desires of the community, having a lot of input, and then having a wide library of kind of model codes that they can find the appropriate code to kind of match where our community is and what we're looking for. I also know the amount of engagement we've had around zoning specifically recently that I think there'll be a lot of input on that. So I'm cautioning them that I think that might take longer than anticipated. So we're kind of working through what the timeline for that looks like.
Holding my
That's
question,
helpful.
John. Thank you.
I'm somewhat hobbled by being an eternal optimist. And it's interesting how 2 of us could look at the same document and come up with totally different reactions, because I found it's been a while since I really looked carefully at the comprehensive plan item by item, which I did do at one time to sort of test it the same way you have and see, well, what has changed since it was written, and has it gone in a good direction or not? And I found it very positive. I saw that it was effective.
Because you're both right. It's done well. There's always more to do, and let's not lose sight of it.
Yeah.
It's true. Thank you both. Was that?
That's it.
So I'm wondering about
I should maybe add one more thing. So
no, I'm gonna ask my question first. What's the public facing platform that you have right now for people to know that the next meeting is coming up?
So the meetings are always posted on the Facebook Village Hall as well as the website for the village, for just community meetings as they call it.
Oh, okay,
That's
okay.
a monthly, every third Thursday, 6:30, this room, that's standing, so anyone can ever kind of show up. And we have, over the past couple of weeks, or a couple of meetings, had more than no people show up, which is great. As far as the public meetings go, we've tried every mode of communication possible. So we sent postcards to everybody in the village. We've been in all of the local newspapers, columns that cover Trumansburg, Facebook, Nextdoor, village website, village email list, Swift 911.
Great.
Hopefully everyone heard it one way or another.
Oh, sure. So let's also, let's put a link on our page to get to the CPZR information. And then and I'm not sure who's doing the communications up, but can you add to that, because we forget things, I forget things. Maybe we can be pinged to remind folks, like, can you
Yeah. and
send me a notice
we
too?
did.
Like, so I make sure that
If you didn't get one,
as a board, as the planning board? Did I?
I personally emailed every board member.
No, I know. No, I did. So
Okay,
the
good.
next thing though,
Yeah,
so then
it
it's
went
already a
in-
mechanism in
Yes,
place.
yes,
I
yes.
did.
It went into her junk file.
Oh, let me check my spam. No, I did.
The cat mixed in with the cat gifts that I sent you.
No, I did get that, and we haven't missed anything in between, so it's already in place that we'll get that again, and I will make, I'll do due diligence to make sure we all know, so we can tell
Yes.
our friends and
No,
villagers.
so we
to
had,
come.
yeah, so we had a general, kind of communication list of the boards, kind of members of the community, the chamber board president.
That's great,
We'll
yeah.
try and do that again.
Right, and you can lead a horse to water, or you can tell them where the water is, but you can't make the horse go, I don't know, whatever.
Right.
Okay,
So,
great,
we did
thanks.
have, I want to say, close to 70 folks show up. I think I might have included the committee and our consultants as well, but it was a healthy turnout.
Good,
You know,
yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're helping as much as we can to get the community engaged and give them
Yes.
the resources. Yeah, as a board, not you not doing your job, just us. Great. Okay, sorry, you wanted to say something.
Well, the other thing is in February, and I don't know the date off the top of my head, but it's the third Thursday. We are looking to, so we'll have a regular committee meeting in the evening, but we're figuring out a time window
20th.
to have a meeting as well in the middle of the day. And the idea is to bring in members of village staff, department heads that have specific insight into concerns of the village that we should be thinking about, but also to bring in board members, specifically board chairs. So Jess, I'm reaching out to you to either, if you care to meet in the middle of the day, or come to our evening meeting for a specific kind of what's top of mind for the planning board, what things continue to come up. It might be a little less clear for the planning board, but I'll maybe say for the zoning board, for instance, what are the things that always come up?
Right,
again?
what are we always
Always a
issuing?
problem.
Right.
You know, what do we need to be thinking about putting in the comprehensive plan in advance that we are addressing it in zoning time? But if there's anything specifically that's kind of planning board specific, and obviously please confer with your board, and if anyone else has ideas, you know, can come through you to come to our meeting.
Okay, so let's all make note of that to compile our list of questions or concerns, whatever,
And I'll
for
also
February
be-
20th meeting.
Yeah, I'll also be sending out to you the drafts, if there's, trying to think if there's anything planning specific. For instance, there's a section in the draft that's about public safety. So I'll be taking that section, sending it to the chief, police, the
Sure.
fire chief, so that they can see what we're talking about, see if there's anything we missed or anything.
Okay,
I'll see if there's anything planning board specific. If not, there'll be kind of a general questionnaire for just things to think about and mull over. That'll be something I'm sure we can. And I can send you, you can send your board if that kind of jumpstarts the ideas.
okay, great.
Well, there's two things in the ordinance that are specifically planning board. One is site plan review, and second is special permits.
Right.
So those would be obvious things.
Right, so, right, if there's been
There-
any, I mean, you've now been through both of those in quite some detail. If there's parts that have really come to you that are out of, you know, not in keeping, or accurate, or unclear, you know, whatever it might be that you wrestled with.
But my understanding of that too, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, is that really comes down to when they're writing the code part. So like there's a comprehensive plan part, notion of actionable items on that, so that we can feel like we're keeping it, and then there's the writing of the code, which
Oh,
would
no,
then
I
be-
understand, but were you seeking input on the ordinance or ordinance on this third Thursday in February?
That would be more on the comprehensive plan.
Oh,
To
okay,
the extent
sorry.
that there are possibly broader topics, or, I mean, the point is that when you get to zoning, you want to somewhat be able to link everything, any major changes back to something in the comprehensive plan. So
Sure,
if, for instance, we wanted to see, you know, more protection of our streams, and, you know, in the site plan review, it wasn't giving you the tools to enforce that, we're gonna have a section about supporting our streams, and an action item underneath that might be revisit site plan review. And so, when it can kind of be tied to a broader theme, that's how we can kind of tie those together. So if there's just things that seem really out of whack in the current site plan or site or subdivision that aren't helping support what we want as a community,
okay.
we can kind of tie those all.
And then I think,
That's helpful, thanks.
what is the role of the planning board once it does come down to reviewing potential zoning code changes and rewrites? Will we have a chance to, I think, we'll have a chance to see the proposition, digest it, make some suggestions or whatever,
Right.
and it's then the village, right? But we're a part of that process.
So I think it would be much like the comprehensive plan in which, as members of this board and as the community, please engage with all the ways that we're going to engage with the community. And then I think we'll also probably solicit specific feedback from the board, as much like we're doing in February, specific to the boards, because you have additional kind of knowledge and experience with that.
So I think it would be very good if it's, and I'm not sure if this is the venue, but, and I can communicate with the mayor, especially if we all think this way. I think it would be really wise to let the planning board have a crack at reviewing a draft of a potential zoning code and comprehensive plan for final approval, to get feedback of experts who work with the documents.
Yeah.
So making sure that that's, again,
Right.
that feedback can get totally chopped.
Right.
But why wouldn't you have as many experienced editors weigh in?
No, I completely agree. I guess the only reason I kind of stuttered is because we actually want that from everyone.
Oh, yes.
Right. So like,
Oh, yes, but
it'll be out there as a full draft
yes.
for everyone, and we will communicate it well. We can explicitly reach out to the planning board and zoning board for additional, input. And please collate that together individually, send it to us as a board, send it to us however you feel like it's most effective to bring that input. Yes, we want all of it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Great, good, thank you. Do we have any more questions for Mr. Darko, who's been very generous of his Thursday time
Thank
at
you.
this point?
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that good work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I might stick around.
May I just, for 1 second, respond to the leading the horse to water? That's a Dorothy Parker line, but her most profound one was Higgledy-Piggledy, my white hen. She lays eggs for gentlemen, neither gun or lariat will make her produce for the proletariat.
Oh.
And it wasn't a horse, it was spelled with W-H. Okay.
She also said, when it was raining out, let's go in and step into a dry martini.
What a brilliant woman. Is she, can we call her up? Like after this meeting?
Oh, okay. So next on the agenda is to review conditions of compliance of approved site plans. And so, Rick, I think this is something that you've brought to our attention, and we should do. Should maybe set a plan. I didn't pressure Tom to be here. He's
Right.
quite overtaxed.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, and I sympathize totally. This is just one of those things that's been out there for us, because we've had the site plan review process in effect for multiple years now. There's been a few significant site plan reviews where we've imposed conditions,
Right.
and then approved plans based on those things. And we've never circled back to sort of see, well, did this work? Have these things actually happened? To what extent? Do we wish that maybe they had been done a little bit differently? Can we learn from them? That kind of thing. We've never done that in any kind of formal way. We've done it kind of informally, I think, on our own. But I've just been thinking, and I know I'm not alone on the board, that, it would be useful for us to
Absolutely.
sort of as a class project, go back and look at, the 3 or 4 significant reviews that we've had in the last 5 years, say, or maybe more.
So let's, I'm feeling like let's develop a process to do
What we would need
this.
to do is have the actual approved plan.
Okay.
And in a form that we can look at and kind of remind ourselves what we decided, and then compare that with what actually happened. It might be, we'd have to get permission, obviously, from the property owners
To
or
check,
whatever,
sure.
to just go and have a look.
Or the codes officer does it. So help me figure out the workflow of this. So
Yeah.
do we ask the clerk to identify the site plans that have been passed with conditions in the past 5 years?
Well, just, I'd say,
How do we find that?
yeah,
And whose workload is that?
yeah, that's probably the code and zoning officer. I don't know how the filing system is set
I
up.
don't know either, but let's check in with him.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll ask
He'd
Tom.
probably have a better idea, I mean, it's not a lot. There
Yeah, sure.
aren't a lot to start with. And
And
But
then,
it may be one of those things where the filing system isn't set up by, okay, I'm going to go to the file drawer that has all the site plans.
Yeah, I'm not sure
It's
how that
probably
works.
set up by property. My guess is
he'll know
that
though.
individual properties
Yeah.
probably are the basis, and so it will require some memory and things like that. But, it's probably not a simple process actually to just line up the.
Which actually is an interesting,
Yeah.
creates another interesting workflow. Like maybe now in the world of digital reality, like as we move forward, how are we documenting plans that are approved with conditions, and then how do they get followed up on? I bet there is actually a system. I bet Tom will,
Maybe.
he'll say, oh no, we do this, and then
Yeah,
we
I
get filed
can,
here.
I can
and then-
perform a search on site and it'll.
Yeah.
pull them up. I don't
But
know.
I think it's important, and I think that we've addressed a couple plots that were problematic, and then how do we follow up with them? And if there is no
Right across
teeth in
the
a
street.
condition, then
Yeah,
How does
but
anyone-
did they actually do what they promised to do?
they did.
That's
Did
essentially-
they do it in the timeline that they said they would?
They did it. They were,
Or did they?
oh, in
just-
general.
And given
Yeah.
what, or something like this, given what actually happened there, is there a way that we could have approached it a little bit differently to achieve?
To make,
what we
to be
were-
more
That maybe
effective
was
the next time.
technically in compliance, but not in the spirit of, what we had in mind.
What we
Something
understood to be in compliance, or
And I-
what we understood
What we
to
had,
be their
what
plan.
we hoped to,
I think that is especially important as we may be facing more projects in the
Yeah.
future
Yeah.
that have conditions, to have a good, clear process of follow through on checkup.
May I ask you, did you mean by that more locally here, or our connection with a huge project with Ithaca and neighborhood housing?
Oh, no, not, so- that
Please.
would be, a piece of it going forward, but I'm thinking of looking back right now and then using the information that we could gather for that to shape future.
Because
things that we're
I
looking at.
actually, based on what you mentioned, started to look at the records, more or less of what Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Services in Ithaca did do and didn't do.
Oh.
Which was also quite interesting.
Mhm.
Oh, in Ithaca? Luckily, we aren't
Their
concerned with
process
the,
is so different. from
follow-up
ours.
with
I mean,
it,
Well, but it relates. It
Miss
relates.
Well,
Hannah?
they do relate.
Does the village have any means of recourse? Like, can we fine a property owner? Like, what do we do if they are out of compliance?
Guy mentioned that at one of the meetings where this came up, and his point was that the only real mechanism for enforcement is with community members to file a complaint. The planning board has no independent authority.
But
to do
can
that.
we, does the village board?
Hmm.
Are we sure about that? Like,
Well, he was pretty sure about it, and he said it was not uncommon that, that basically,
Like who, but so a village member filed a complaint and then you can
Then the-
find somebody? And who
well,
does that? What
no,
body?
what would have to happen with Tom would, commence a review, and based on that, try to convince the property owner to do what was required to do. Ultimately, if they don't do it, the village would have to sue the property owner. It's happened here.
So there's no kind of intermediary?
There's been a recent example where there
Exactly.
was a lawsuit against the property owner. Now, I don't know if that was preceded by a complaint
It was.
it
Yeah.
was,
Yeah, that
but
was the triggering.
that was a perfect example of where the zoning bylaw could be interpreted in a variety of ways and brings attention to the fact that
Which
when it
lawsuit was
gets-
this?
rewritten,
It was.
that we have to be more precise.
Yeah.
It was the building that is currently, what is the business that's in it now?
I'm not sure.
It's
On our main street, right?
It's on Route
On Main
96.
Street,
uh,
out
Yeah.
toward Albany.
on,
A woman opened a
She has.
medical
She
office.
has a,
The the
Parking
She,
lot.
she put a parking lot in front of her house that will accommodate
But is
maybe
there- I
20
mean-
cars.
Yeah,
And no
oh, the chiropractor?
landscaping.
Pardon me?
It's a
Yes.
chiropractor.
Yeah,
Medical
chiropractors, right.
So,
No, not, I don't think it's medical.
Well, chiropractor is
Yeah.
actually some of
So,
that.
is
so
that like across all of New York State, it has to be that way? Or could we, as a board, say we would like an intermediary step? We don't want to just go ahead and sue everybody, but like if they
can we
don't
impose
paint
fines?
the sidewalk lines, we'd like to find them.
Yeah,
Can we do something like that?
Well, it's possible. I mean, then the question is, how do you enforce the fine?
I mean, but it's just another,
with,
no, it's
with
just
billing and
another-
then it's,
yeah.
then it's court, but
Right,
like,
right.
but
But-
I actually thought we had, so I think we should investigate this. I thought we had a small amount of, through the codes officer and the building code, a fine potential if conditions were met. So let's see what we can do or could do in the future. And I know,
I
if
think
you're
it's,
gonna.
I think it's pretty limited. and
Is it?
If
Okay.
it exists at all. And that's why, in the case of this parking lot in the front yard, they ended up having to go to court.
And they lost.
And they lost that too.
You mean, we lost. Yeah.
They, the
I
village.
talked to Tom about it, and he felt very badly about it. He said, I'm sorry, last time I talked to him, he said that I wasn't able to sort of straighten this out to begin with. And I said, well, furthermore, after we thought we were going to lose this one, which we did for some reason, because it's right in a residential section.
The Dollar General.
Residential, and now it becomes a big parking lot. He was promised and said to me that he was promised that at least it was going to be very nicely landscaped. So once I saw the 2 dead geraniums outside, I kind of lost.
Well, let's not poke any bears or
Yeah,
dig up
yeah,
bones. That's
But,
done.
like, what's the point of even thinking as a board about revisiting all of these projects if there's nothing we can do?
Well, there is, so you can take them to court.
Like,
Yes.
You
are
can-
we gonna actually
Well, one thing that you can do,
over like
I
the
mean, this
lines
is-
on the sidewalk
this is
or like?
perfect timing because they're going to be rewriting the zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was,
Maybe we
that
need
was the
something more
issue.
Forceful.
That was the issue, that they could not define a parking lot in a way
Mhm.
that made it clear that she had violated it.
Right,
So that's how she-
and
They
couldn't
couldn't
even
define a driveway.
subsequently
Yeah.
properly at least hide it in some greenery, so not to offend both neighbors on either side, and the man next door to her on the south side.
Yeah, but
So
it has to
house-
be in legal terms.
Of course.
That's the thing.
This was more
So,
theoretical.
and I
understand.
feel compelled as a mother and for the folks listening at home, what is the recourse if you decide to just blatantly ignore the rules and go on? There is always a consequence. There is never underestimate this serious pressure of this small village. If you are not going to do the right thing and it's hideous
Mhm.
and you defied the board and you defied the village and you defy your neighbors, it's incredibly uncomfortable and you can get taken to court and you can have a tremendous amount of support behind that court and you can lose. So until we fix these things, like no, it's not simple. It's not like you're going to have to pay me $1,000 in a month, but it's real. I mean, those are real consequences to not do the right thing.
I mean, like, okay, I am not a lawyer. I'm sorry to press this, but is like, can we ask Guy as a board, like, to investigate?
Yes.
If there's any intermediary
I
step,
think
because
so.
it seems
Yeah.
very limited.
I
Like,
think that Rick has, but I
what's
agree.
the point of even, it
Yeah.
seems,
Let's
I
see
don't know
what, if there's
I don't know
more.
if you
Yeah.
remember that,
I know,
what did come up, but, yeah.
but yeah, I
I
mean.
could ask him again.
Let's ask and see if it's something that can
Well,
be built
see,
in
yeah,
that isn't
so,
there
like,
already, or like, let's,
Did we ask
get
him,
more.
is there anything else we can do, or did he just say, this is the way that, this is what exists now?
I think he said that we could try to incorporate something like that into the ordinance.
Okay,
And that sort of stopped the conversation because,
it hadn't.
again, one of the things we know from the Board of Trustees are not interested in piecemeal changes to the zoning ordinance at this point. At least that's the message we've gotten. They want to do it as part of a full-fledged
We'd love to hear this input.
Yeah, this is really,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly right.
No, I
And
agree
let's
with
ask
Hannah
Guy,
on
let us
this
put
one.
that
I
Hannah
think-
on the notes. to ask
I
Guy.
think, don't theorize and don't, back and forth and back and forth. Write some of this up. I mean, this
Yeah.
you cannot do and this you can do. And if you minimally, she was asked to do some landscaping to obscure what she did with that oversized parking lot, and she did nothing. And I thought that was absolutely absurd.
And another consequence that I would add is that the next time that you go to ask for a variance or a thing, you need a favor or someone to understand your perspective, but you did not understand theirs and you broke the rule, good luck. So,
Yeah,
Okay.
it's surprising when you look at broadly, you know, and you make rules about things, how often it isn't the enforcement mechanism that makes people obey the rules. You
It's
know?
not what,
yeah.
It isn't the enforcement mechanism that makes people want to comply with the rules. It's that they're the rules.
They're the
And
rules.
To make society work,
Mostly we follow
you
them.
need to follow
Yeah.
the rules, you know?
yeah, that's why
Commerce
clearly
is
defined is
defined.
always best.
Yeah,
Yeah, you need,
Oh.
you need to have,
Clearly
you
defined
need to
is
have
best.
clear rules. You need
you
to have
say
clear rules.
something.
We lost one of our board members, remember, with his battle on Bryant Avenue, was it?
No more bones.
Brad.
Bradley.
Just say something.
Oh, I just want to say that this is, I think, the importance of having this feedback from this board in the February and March meetings of the CPCR committee, because it would be remiss if all of this came out at the end when you review the whole thing and we missed some parts. So this is, it may feel like piecemeal, but I think it would be really helpful for us not to miss it
Mhm.
now and be able to incorporate it into the comprehensive plan.
Why don't I officially say that I'll ask Guy about what other things, like knowing he had a preliminary conversation with Rick, what else could we?
Well, you know,
have in?
he was at, this was a board meeting that he,
Oh, I thought you
discussed
also
this
had a
at-
conversation.
no, no,
Oh,
no, this
okay.
was in an open.
I remember that and I felt
You
like it was
can- you
specific
can
to
go
that case.
Look at Ben's video.
I remember that, thinking it was specific to
Yeah.
the case, not like in
Yeah.
broad. Okay,
No,
great.
The second thing is in the minutes of the meetings, it talks about the conditionally approved
Right.
site plan. So if you, are there meeting minutes from the past few years?
Oh, yeah, we
Just
can
look at?
find them. So again,
Because that would be the better
so
way
which
to
is a
then
great
kind of
segue
search
back to
each
the
one.
process of
Yeah.
how will we identify? So why don't I start by asking Tom? Because if he has an answer of, oh, I actually do have a file drawer with the ones with conditions, great.
Yeah.
If not, then let's work with the clerks to see what we can do. And then I think it would be, what would be the next steps? The next step would be to recognize them and digest that material and bring that to a board meeting.
I wouldn't limit it to just the ones that are with formal conditions, because every time we grant a site plan, every time we approve a site plan, the conditions are that they meet the terms of the site plan. So it's, you know, and like I said, there's probably only 4 or 5.
Oh, for real?
of
Okay,
these, you
okay.
know. You
So
know,
all
it's
of
just
them,
not
okay.
that many, yeah. Because all residential construction is basically not.
Not a
included.
site plan.
So, you know, it just doesn't come up all that often. I'm just curious though, you know, and interested in whether we can learn things from what has been done.
Especially in light of,
Well, the fact is that the project that we're talking about did not get reviewed by the planning board. It was a residence.
That's right. That's right. It was not, there was no site plan review there at all.
Just throwing out an idea, but, so here we are, we've been talking about this for so long. I feel like it comes up every couple of meetings, and it's always like, yes, good idea, it's a good idea. And it is a good idea, but to keep us accountable, is there any way of saying like, getting a report from Tom, an annual report, somehow incorporating that into some kind of rule, some kind of, I don't know, if we can make that part of his official duties to like report annually to the planning board of the projects that have come before him here and if they're in compliance or not.
yeah. So, that's super great. And it also furthers this notion of check-in with Tom. What do we think about, so we're not just talking, but we're moving forward. Why don't I check in with Tom and say, what is the process for you to follow up on site plans and make sure that so I understand what he's already doing. And say the board is interested in just checking in and making sure we're
In
in
the loop.
tune with that,
I mean,
in the
like,
loop. And without terrorizing anybody, could we build in some modicum of reporting
Because
out on that
when we
for
are
us?
gone, like we have, this board has been talking about it for a long time. we just were talking about members are gonna come and go. Like, if we don't have something in place,
Yeah.
it's just.
Well, do you like that? Does that seem to satisfy that? Like if I check in with Tom, find out what he already does, and then say, how can we build in a regular reporting mechanism?
Yeah.
Is a good starting point.
I mean, do we ask him how we can put in a regular
Well,
reporting mechanism?
kindly
or-
recognizing his workflow, where in your workflow could we implement a mechanism?
But I don't feel like, I mean, we just said he's got a crazy workflow. Like, maybe
Which-
we need another,
Well-
isn't he doing like 2 jobs right now?
So they're working on
I
it.
don't
Is
feel like we
actually,
should ask him. I feel like if this is something that we want, like, recognize that this is something that the board wants and needs. And do we put it before the village board? And then
well, I think
maybe
that,
that'll give them more reason to actually hire another person that,
so they're working on job descriptions. It was
Yeah.
brought up at the last village board meeting.
or maybe add this to the job
So
description.
recognizing that this is something that we need, I think
Yeah.
that again, talking to the person who is the guy doing the work, how could this happen? It's up to him to say, this is how it could happen, but I couldn't possibly do it, or,
Actually, Tom is only working half-time. He works for the town
right.
and for the village.
The village.
And they're split, they're 2 jobs.
Right.
But yes,
Sounds like he's overtaxed, so.
but again, that is
Do
a
we really
concern,
wanna
but not a
ask him?
concern.
Yeah.
He's the only guy that can
Well-
answer what the current mechanism is and how someone with unlimited time could, or how best that position could report to the board, and we know we need it. So if he can do it, he can't, great. If he can't, he says, I can't, but this is how it should be done, and then the village board says,
I
great. we need
called
more
him
people.
recently to talk about a couple of issues, and he said he was totally buried.
Yeah.
Totally behind on his projects, working both for the township and for the
I mean, but
village.
that's not,
That's
like,
not an
not,
acceptable
this
answer
just
for
sounds
us.
harsh, but it's not our problem. Like,
No, it's
Yeah.
not, no.
if we want
yeah.
that information, like, how do we get it?
Right, and it's not about Tom, it's now about the positions
Yeah.
needed to, yeah, so
It's
we will.
Paying
get
more
it.
hours, or as you said, maybe some part-time additional staff, whatever,
So
to
again, they
do a
are,
better job, to be able to stay on top of all these things. He's buried, he told me that.
so I'll say it again, at the last village board meeting, the board, the village board is working on redefining that job, deciding if it can be made, I don't know, they didn't go into tremendous details. I inferred, is this now something that can be made a full-time position, zoning and codes, such that someone would want to do that? Or are we still thinking of splitting it into 2 and conversation will happen? So you're absolutely right. The thing that the planning board needs is the thing that it needs, and how it gets fulfilled is not exactly our responsibility. So I think we're all, okay. So Rick, does that, I think that sort of satisfies,
Yeah, it is. I mean, Tom is in the best position to know how to set something like that up. and
Yeah.
Whether it can be done or not. So I think a conversation just along those lines.
yeah,
If the planning board was interested in something
How-
like this, how would it look?
Yeah.
And not that you have to do it. now,
Right,
Or,
right.
you know, but how would it look? How would this best fit in with what you know to be the current systems within the village office and
And I would-
efficiency?
I would even say, could it happen quarterly, semi-annually, or annually? Because
Sure.
annually is kind of,
Another, what would work best, you know?
Yeah.
An annual review, quarterly review.
right,
And he's in a position to know that in a way that no one else is.
okay, good. Great. It's 8:30 that I scheduled for privilege of the floor, but probably no one was just hanging outside waiting. If they do come in and we're still here, we could ask for them if they want to speak. But, so I've sort of taken a cue from the village board, which is that they open up the privilege of the floor, so public comment, but really you can sort of ask questions about anything that you want. It doesn't have to pertain to the specific topics that we've just discussed, but it's a chance to ask the planning board, and you can ask me about deeper psychological or us issues, but we might not answer those. So your privilege is that, but we are the planning board. So at this time, if anyone in the room would like to, in the public, like to express any comments or ask any questions for the planning board, we're here for you. Ms. Shalish.
Yeah, Maureen Shalish, live on Larchmont Drive. So the comments here tonight that we spoke about the comprehensive plan, But it's a live document, it's current, it can continue to have an effect on what we do going forward until the new one is in place. So there is still hope for us to continue to follow that. It's not a completely done, dead document, and we can't do anything more with that.
Right.
And then just your discussion now, I think the value in what you proposed about looking back, with the conditions you put on certain site plans, you might understand that those conditions are because the current zoning or the documents that are written are not as specific as you'd like them to be, and you put conditions on that. So I think the value in looking back at what conditions have been placed would be helpful going forward, knowing these are the things we already discovered that we weren't firm enough on, and that we should go back and look at that.
Or weren't supported in the code in front of us.
Yeah, right. And I'm surprised that there isn't an audit process already in place for the village to do that.
And-
It seems, when I look at, through the state education department and state controller's office, when I look at all their reports, what they do when they go into the education systems and the government, and everything that they look at, I'm surprised that that isn't already in place.
So there very well may be, and I'm super sensitive about this topic. I feel like if Tom was sitting next to me, he would say, I absolutely review those. We just aren't in touch with it currently, I think is fair. So,
Yeah, and if we are.
Just to be fair,
I think it's a great idea. to move
may be
forward
happening,
and make sure.
and make sure the planning board is aware. Yeah,
Yeah.
it very well really may be happening.
Thanks.
Yes, sorry, 13 sounds good. I had some questions about the meeting 3 months ago where the temporary conditional approving of Crescent Lake. I don't really understand that when are we going to have a meeting where we see if all of the conditions have been met? And how much timeline will be left to correct any of those things? And what's the answer to that?
So the answer to that is that 180 days of preliminary approval, the applicant needs to submit final preliminary plat final plat that meets the conditions satisfactory to the board, that then they vote. We have been led to believe that we should expect that submission at about the middle of February. Once it's submitted, we as a board have 45 days to review that and then vote.
Well, it seemed to me that whenever the board, your planning board, brought up certain conditions that they felt were important, for example, lighting on the pathway, and a few others that the board acquiesced, oh, okay, we don't have to do that. So,
That one actually ended up on there. They are required to put some lighting on the path.
well, it did say, solar, but then they said in the meeting that they were not going to be responsible for maintaining them. They would put them there, and it's in the forest. I don't know how much solar lighting there's really going to be there, and it's not a maintained path. And, their contention is that nobody will use that path, and they all know that, I have kids who run through my yard
Right.
in order to get to, a neighbor's yard, because it's a shortcut. That's just human nature. That's gonna happen. So, anyway, I really felt like whatever came up, they said this is what they want, and you all said, okay, fine, and it just worked on. So then when is, I guess I'm asking, when does the buck stop?
It stops after their next submission, and if they haven't satisfactorily met those conditions, for example, following this notion of the path, if they don't show any lighting on there,
Yeah.
that's not meeting the condition. If they show lighting on there that is completely superfluous and isn't actually lit, that's not meeting the condition. And then that would be a discussion for the board and would definitely affect the vote. So then I would say it is, and we'll definitely, Janice, announce, like, once the submission is in, that has to be noted because it starts with the next timeline.
Well, and I really didn't like their response to, this is the most expensive project we've ever had to do, and so lighting is out of the question. Well, come on, it's $25 million, which they have on their website saying that this is what this is going to cost, then why are we doing dining at this point?
I think you got I think there were some smiles on the board when they made a comment like that, and
Yeah.
we carried through. Yeah,
It's not
thank
lost
you.
on us.
It's not. I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that.
And then the other thing, just a not so casual observation, is that probably the biggest landlord in town and most reputable landlord in town has totally sold out and left town. And then right here.
I'm sorry.
Who's that?
Herb Osgood sold all his properties, and now there's a management company that's doing it with. So he's, and then today on Main Street, I see that Bill Kohlberg's, apartments are, for sale.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure which properties those are.
It's an apartment building right on Main Street,
Right next to where-
kind of directly across from the new beauty parlor.
Oh,
That was the ice cream
oh, the
store.
gray, the mill building? It's got a millstone?
Right
Okay.
on one side, or inside or something like that. So this, to me, is an observation that my conclusion is that some of the landlords will get out before this project happens and we don't lose, because it's been a concern of mine all along, what happens to the landlords here in town. Maybe ones that are not providing as nice a properties as they should be, or can step up a little bit to try to be.
Or sell
compliance,
and not
or-
deal.
Or sell and get out of town. And I think that reading the statistics, we're looking at, now we're gonna have more rentals in terms of property owners and, individual homeowners. And I think that's something that we should pay attention to. And, I did talk personally to her boss, and that was coming. But, Bill Colbert, I haven't talked to him, but, it makes you wonder.
No, it's interesting.
Was, how that's gonna change when reputable, landlords start leaving town, what effect is that gonna have on the base of?
Bill has opened a most unusual alternative to his apartment building.
And where's that?
In their hilltop residence outside the village, just outside on Falls Road, on a hilltop, they built a very large circular tent. And it's going to be an Airbnb, or it's so tightly built, maybe airless. But anyway, it's very handsome, it's nicely designed, and they intend to change their lifestyle completely.
Yeah.
In other words, this is up for sale. They got, I don't know if they get worried about the future, as you're saying, but what will happen
We're
to
just
their properties.
exhausted by being landlords.
But what they did is a very large circular tent, and it's, you see, in America, it seems to me, forgive me for 1 second for drifting.
You got it, girl.
We build it first. We have the idea first. We make the money, we build it. Then come the consequences. But those always come last instead of first. It's for instance, the woman that was just killed in one of the main avenues in New York City, who was the vice president for the big distribution company that takes everything in trucks, Amazon, right? She was just run over on her bicycle. The trucks now stop all the traffic in the larger cities where they deliver what they deliver.
So this is
My point is just to wrap this up. Invent it, make the money, and then come the consequences. In America, it should be the opposite. Invent it, just, think about the consequences and then proceed, but we don't do it that way.
Vicki,
We do
that
it-
sounds like a big cheer for site plan review. Thank God for site plan review.
By the way, in reviewing the past comprehensive plan, for some reason I had all the appendices that went along with it, which are quite valuable. The appendices are really
You're gonna
useful
sell
to read.
them?
I'll share them with you,
Okay.
over at Martini.
Finally mentioned.
Anyway, one of the things that was in there is that, in fact, when the comprehensive plan was done, about half the properties in Trumansburg are rentals, which was a surprise to me.
That was the case then. Though, and then I do want to make sure Ms. Janice got to say everything she
Oh,
wanted,
sorry.
but I think that is a good point, and, planning is definitely focused on permanence and then that balance that you have to do with just really the economic climate is such, and the proclivity of people is such that not everyone actually wants to own or can own a home. And there are long-term rentals. So it's definitely a really good point to never lose sight of. Thank you for raising it.
See that information on the last census, which would be interesting to see what the new census says.
Right. Yeah.
About what our rental versus home ownership is. But then the other thing I think that we need to be looking at in the village is there's no regulations for Airbnbs. And they're cropping up all over the place.
Yeah.
And sometimes houses here in the village have been sold specifically to people who are using.
Just
them as
doing that.
Airbnbs. So again, that's diminishing our permanent
Yeah.
population and investment in
Yeah.
the community. Or, there are people that come and go from the Airbnbs, but they're not people who, contribute to the community. Now, somebody can say, well, they ate at the restaurant, they did this and that, but they're not really community members.
It's different, right?
It's different.
It's tourism dollars and
Yeah.
not.
Which
uh-huh.
I think we need to think about Airbnb regulations. I don't think we have any in the counties. Again, I could be wrong.
So let's make a note
Good idea.
of that. Is there anyone on this board who's interested in following up on Airbnb regulations? Thank you.
Lansing is in the midst of looking at them very seriously.
City of it, too.
Yeah, I mean, New York
Everywhere.
State,
Everywhere.
Yeah.
but if you would, because I don't know that we've actually really
No.
addressed it. We might have, there, again, the village
Need
board
some
might be talking
numbers
about
and-
it, but if you would, that would be great.
I'll do
We
it.
made-
There's plenty of samples out there.
Yeah.
I can say we made the mistake, without thinking too hard about putting some example what ifs on the survey, the questionnaire that was put out.
You put on
Just
there.
easier. It was just it was drafted and I didn't, I'll say, I understand personally, give a second thought. Anyhow, one of the examples was perhaps Airbnb. What would you think about that?
You got lots of red crayon writing.
Well, so
back.
these questions prompted a lot of people to answer the example question rather than kind of thinking more broadly. So we have a lot of feedback. about
On that.
Airbnb, and
Good.
that will probably come up in the comprehensive plan process. So anything you find out, consider, think about, find that are interesting or, some parts you're delight, please. Hold on.
Well, I think a few of the regular B&Bs in town have closed because of the competition with Airbnbs. That's the reason that they give. So we're losing legitimate businesses that are collecting taxes, et cetera,
Sure,
to Airbnbs. And I think it's something that,
it's important. It is, I agree. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So Ms. Barbara, you just came in. I don't know if we're now in the process of the privilege of the floor. I don't know if there's any, which had been stated to be at 8:30. So I said that I would recognize anyone that came in after we'd started, since we started early, and I'm wanting to make sure that if you felt like you had something you wanted to say, and that's why you hear that you have that opportunity.
What Janice just said was something that was really on my mind about the Airbnb thing. I think it really does promote communities. And I think it's really a problem in Ithaca. So I think it's in New York City and, I think that's something that really needs to be looked into. I don't know how you prevent it or, how that would work, but.
Yeah, I mean, right, there, it was a question that came up, and there are things within coding of, the code about how many people can be there for how long who aren't part of the family unit, and there's some stuff, but we don't have super tight language necessarily about it now, so it merits exploration, for sure.
Be devil's advocate. I love Airbnb.
Yeah, what do you?
I'm like, yeah, and I'd be curious to know reasons that Airbnb, are there good things? What are the good things about Airbnb? Can we weigh the pros and cons?
Yeah, I mean,
Rather
it's
than
literally a cottage industry. It's literally an economic benefit to people who are in a struggling economy.
Yeah.
Though,
But it's
Some
very
say it's
hard
not
on
struggling.
people that spent the money to clean up, their
Yeah,
rentals. It's tough for them.
It also
This
doesn't
just came in
contribute to,
like, boom.
doesn't contribute to tax base, you know.
Mhm.
So I think that might end up being how New York State, I'll be very interested in watching how New York State handles this, because I think they're close to getting their tax cut. Their tax,
So
their
they
cut of
are-
tax.
They are, and
Yeah.
every municipality can work with Airbnb specifically. There are also other online sources that do this, but I know Airbnb specifically. We'll work with New York State, and I'm fairly sure it does work with the county already.
To collect the room tax.
Should
and
we
pay it.
should we as a municipality want to enforce our own hotel tax for our own local municipality for our Airbnbs and so forth? We could do that, but that would then have to put it on Airbnb to get that, all squared away. So there are ways to get that done, for sure.
So that it's at least a more level playing field.
Right, well, I mean, at this point, it is a level playing field. We don't have a municipality tax on
On rooms.
any, on rooms, right? So
So it's all county.
So it's all county tax, which goes to $20,000, and it is a level playing field with Airbnb, specifically HomeAway and other places, maybe not. I'm not as familiar with those. I don't know if it's, sometimes it's called the Airbnb bill because it covers all of them, sometimes it's because it covers Airbnb, so I couldn't really say anything about this specifically. But I think it is a good point, because it does bring in additional income for people that need that, on a case-by-case basis, or either rent out something in the back to make them business, or there are pluses and minuses. So
Getting fuzzy right now.
yeah, right now, we're not doing anything. So one thought I've heard bandied around that I think makes a lot of sense is let's just find out how many there are and who's doing it and start tracking it.
And be more clear on that, sure.
At the very least, why not have that? So
Sure.
that might be a good place to start.
Trustee Dark, are you gonna lead that committee?
It's called the CPCR.
It's happening, it's happening.
Please come down.
Some places are limiting the number of days that a homeowner
Could rent
could
it
rent out their house. Yeah, just to, because we are talking about more people living here, buying homes here, but that's very limited for some people. And the only way that they can buy a home is having some supplemental income. So they talk about being able to do that, but only
For
a certain
certain percentage of
percentage.
it.
Yeah, so there's lots of things to think about.
I've stayed in Airbnbs all over the world, and I'm not saying that Airbnb is not a good thing. I think they just need to pay the taxes.
Yeah,
Like everybody else.
Yeah,
has
no,
to pay the
it's-
taxes, so that it can benefit somehow the community rather than just the individual owner who is, And I've been told by some of the Airbnb people that they make more doing Airbnb than they can get for a rental in town. So that's a little bit of an indication. They were complaining about our rentals being very high, but yet an Airbnb can make more than that, then something's wrong with this picture.
Well, again, you're looking at tourism dollars there instead of your monthly budget, and tourism dollars also benefit the business corridor, which it could, no one is ever allowed to say that business is bad. You
Well,
should always
that's-
have more of it, right?
No, but I mean,
That's
why
a
should they
good
not be paying taxes?
Right, but I'm feeling-
Regular B&B
Oh,
have to
yeah,
pay
they are,
taxes.
but they're,
Reiterate, they are paying.
they are paying the taxes.
Yes, that is happening.
All over Tompkins County?
Yes.
And you could say Airbnb.
That's compliant and not
Every
breaking the law.
place booked through Airbnb.com does pay its taxes through the Airbnb platform. Airbnb takes the cut, sends it to, I don't know if it's the state that sends it to the county or it's in the county directly, I don't know exactly what it is, but yes. You can look up that they signed a contract with the state of New York and counties. However they make that work.
But when you look on the site though, it just says, this is what it is per night. It doesn't say,
Right.
like if you got a hotel bill, it'll tell you this is what it costs, this is what the tax,
Sure.
this is whatever.
I haven't tried to rent an Airbnb in Tompkins County, so I can't say what the bill would look like, but we can do that.
But even the tax portion, Janice, I don't think that negates the notion of thinking of it and how it affects the larger business community and how it affects people in our towns and our neighborhoods instead of in other places. Like, it's still, I think, an important issue.
My dog is shameless, Scooch. I built him a beautiful modernistic bow house, all in aluminum. He's renting it to cats. He doesn't care.
He's renting it to
what's
cats.
in there.
Okay, I'm getting antsy, I'll admit it, it's
Yes.
8:30.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
there.
I'm gonna close the privilege of the floor at this time, and then I don't know that we really need to address old business. I feel like we sort of did with the, right? Anyone feel there's unmentioned old business? Though this is on the borderline, the new business, which I'm thinking, Hannah has a thing on there, but Vicky wanted to sort of talk about the historical district some more. Do you want to talk about that tonight?
Yes, I
Or
keep
do you
it
want to
very
make it
brief,
like,
or if, I would prefer to maybe talk about it a little more at length. I was deeply involved in designating some of the districts in Ithaca. The throwback from doing something like is tremendous. And the other thing that it helps save, because as you I won't go on, I promise. It's just that if you declare that, you actually help save what makes it that. If you don't, it dissipates.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing here. So I'm more than happy to discuss that in more depth and length. I mean, I certainly.
let's make it an agenda item
in the
for
middle
sure.
of most of them.
And let's
Last years.
Let's also wonder if there's what are the spaces in between doing nothing, making this historic district that then is really prescriptive and people, there are problems with that, or how is it really addressed in a comprehensive plan or in a zoning? Like, let's have a good
Yeah, you literally
long
sell it door to
conversation
door.
about this.
And you show them examples of how it pulled up. We'll take some of our neighboring cities, and the thing is to go to them. Like I tell everybody, go to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, please. You want to see a beautiful small city that makes tons of money, that saved all their buildings, that looks fabulous. If you want an example of how a small village can work and function and be healthy and wealthy, go to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, and see what they did and how they kept what they have. One woman did all of it. She was at the university there. It's a remarkable place.
Is that where Bucknell is?
Bucknell, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the place where you drive through that strip. That's.
No, you don't drive through the strip.
Yes, you do.
Take the beautiful Main Street.
I
No
just-
strip.
I hate that strip.
That is the ugliest strip in the world. You should see the village. It's gorgeous.
Okay.
That's the-
Building
that's
after
the
building.
football stadium
All
right next to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
got
don't
both.
take the strip.
compromise.
Okay.
See what they did to their
I go
village
the
and their
quickest
park
way.
and their river.
So,
What the GPS tells me to do, I do.
Yeah. No,
so Vicky,
I
I feel like if, because you've raised this before, we've all expressed
Mm-hmm.
a modicum of interest, and that's sort of where it ends up, and I feel like February pending what's on our business, but and maybe you already, I have a feeling you already are, like, can you come to the board and say, this is what we need to do, this is how we make this happen, this is how you get a historic district recognized, this is what the planning board role is, this is what the village board role is, this is the work that needs to be done if we want that to be done.
It's like anything else on this planet, it's PR.
But like, literally, like, let's make and then.
You
see
bring the
everyone
rules and
forward.
regs in later, you bring the positive elements up front. And since we have the
No, but
beautiful
literally,
buildings,
how do you get it done? How do you say
you
this
talk to
area
people
here will be dead? No,
nonstop.
like, what's the
Everybody.
legislation that identifies it?
that comes
Who has
later. The first
that's
thing,
the
it has
part.
to be sold. Has to be
Well,
sold
you
to
can't
the
sell
people
me
that
until I
own it.
understand the process.
The devil is in the
Gets there.
details, though.
Yeah.
You know that? Yeah.
No, but the first thing is the enthusiasm. You build up, people, what they own, what they have, or what they rent, and what's so special about it. And if this isn't special, there are very few villages left in upstate New York that have this many cast iron facades. It's very special. One side is all Rochester, the other side is all local. Nobody has that.
There's
It's
a,
rare.
No, I get that. I'm just saying,
That's
And
what
not you right now.
I would just
You-
agree
you-
with Jessica that I
You
think
can't do it
you
through
can't-
legislation. You have
you
to
can't sell
literally
you
sell it by,
I don't buy anything that I don't
understand
understand.
what the rules are gonna be if I
details
say yes.
are. You know? I mean, if I buy
The-
a fastener for, something I'm building, I want to
and you
know
ask too many
exactly
questions.
how that's going to look. I want to know exactly where it's going to fit. I
They
wanna
must
know
love you at the
dimensions.
hardware stores.
Well,
Speaking of
I
how
don't
things
know.
look, our fellow board member, Ms. Hannah, has an eye towards beautification and thinking of grants.
Yeah, and I don't have anything to say about it. I just think that'd be really cool to do.
Oh, I thought maybe you had.
I moved that. So moved. Is there a second?
I kind of wanted to just bring it up, as Vicky said, like, you can't get anything done until you
Think about it.
bring it into the world. And so I wanted to, just say that I'm interested in this, and where did those grants come from? Maybe that's maybe that's a research project that the board would like to take on. Is anybody else interested in something like this? I kind of just wanted to put it out there to feel it,
I would just mention that there is going to be another tree planting exercise this spring for the fairgrounds. And one of the ways that we funded that was to set up a little booth in SureSafe and invite people to, quote, buy a tree, although that's not the way it quite works. They make a contribution. And people were falling all over themselves.
Yeah,
to
there are like
contribute
3
to that.
sold in the time I shopped.
They were,
Nuts.
in 1.5 days, and this is at $150 a tree, so
Can be done.
it can be done.
It can be done.
Is this under,
Yeah.
Michelle's purview? Grants?
Yeah, so there's help with the town and connecting with, so.
Maybe just plan this.
Well, and does that tie into the comprehensive plan? Do we want to put something like that in the comprehensive plan so that therefore we can reference it when we go looking for a grant? Or
Yeah, and
does
I
the
feel like,
board,
yeah, right.
does the board itself, can we have pet projects like that, or are we purely review? A lot of the time we don't have anything to review,
No,
so
you-
why not?
I have
you-
information. We already have a Tompkins County beautification grant, and what the garden club does is take care of small tree signs and planting in the village office, et cetera. And that's all reimbursed by this beautification grant in Tompkins County. And, if we have to show hours that garden members do and what the DPW does. And I've also run it through the town, some of our signs happens to be in the town is paying, because they have a beautification grant too. So they're out there, but nobody really knows about them.
Right, so that's why I wanted to
I
bring it
think
up.
you just
Does
found a
anyone know
contact.
anything about it? So,
Just got a contact.
Historic preservation grants. They come out of Albany. There's one, I just talked to one of the ladies at the conservatory, and they just applied for a grant. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's a kind of a beautification grant, but it deals with architecture. And they applied for the exterior painting of the beautiful former Baptist church, the conservatory.
Oh.
They've just finished painting the inside. It looks fabulous what they did on the inside. And they completely refinished their floor. And they had I think they had a small grant for that. And they're now applying for the exterior grant, and that's where it's really needed. That wood is fading, and the front columns.
to me, you talk about the downtown building all the time, and
Yeah.
Steel
Columns.
stuff,
Cast iron.
cast iron. Thank you. But I look at it and they just could look kind of shabby.
Well,
and I think if it's
that's
left
what
up
we
to,
did to them.
yeah,
That's
if you
what
leave
we've
it up
not done
to the building, the property owners, it's hard to pay for that. So I don't know. When I think of beautification, that's what I'm thinking of. Is painting and just kind of sprucing up some of the downtown.
In some cases, you have to do more. If you go to the back of the beautiful brick buildings on the left-hand side, heading north, you'll see the deplorable shape they're really in. They're not shedding water properly. The roofs are leaking. The water's running down through the soft brick. People repointed them with stone-hard, bag mortar, which is the worst thing you can do for brick, because it makes like a grid, and the grid lasts, but it disrupts the brick. It disintegrates it. So we've done some horrible things to those buildings. So some of the things there, some of the issues there are huge. The fronts are a little easier, but the shedding of the water properly is key and critical.
So I think that what this planning board can offer you is a conduit to the public who is interested in similar thoughts and might form a committee with you, like the tree committee happened, to get some resources. And then if anyone on the board also wants to join you in those things, if you start tackling some beautification grants that will help us get the footbridge rebuilt, I will join that committee with you. Because that's what I'm thinking. So keep talking about it and thinking about it, and that's why we're here, right? It's great. Ben,
I can say two things. One is absolutely put it in the ballot. The footbridge will be in there, assuming it's not already fixed by the time we're done with it.
Is there anything about
Maybe
that in
fingers
the
crossed.
comprehensive plan?
Does it say anything about
well, it's
that?
part of walkability and also,
Yeah, it fits very well in walkability and at the very least, so that's what was it. The other thing is just, as far as I understand, financial wise, grants would have to come through the front office of the village board, but that wouldn't by any means prevent anyone from doing a lot of legwork to make that happen. And I'll just speak personally, I love the more help. I brought up a number of times at the board meeting, can we get a part-time grant writer? Can we get, some sort of, we have, Michelle's at the town, who I've met with now, and she's phenomenal, and I wish we had that kind of resource in the village, and we kind of.
well, the
Well,
village
that
is in the
was
town, so
That's true.
I'm just making
Yeah.
nice.
Well, and she's helped us, when we've had joint municipal
Super
ventures, the sidewalk is a great example. Michelle was the person who ran most of that for us.
Yeah.
as I understand, it was a little bit before my time, but there are ways in which we're trying to utilize that. But yes, more people that want to help on that front, absolutely, please do, and we'll figure out how to make the logistics of it work.
And before I maybe make a motion to adjourn, I will note, Ms. Hannah, that there is a Democratic caucus to run for 2 open spots on the board of trustees for the village. You could go and run on beautification platform, but I do encourage everybody to go to the caucus if you're a registered Democrat in the village, and just participate and ask all your good questions. And thank you so much
Or
for
come
coming.
watch if you're not.
Thank you for everyone who came and for speaking during
To
the,
be more than 0, as Ben says.
Yeah.
to be more than 0. Thank you for coming.
And when is that meeting?
It's at 3:00 on Sunday at the fire hall. Mhm.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Motion,
Second.
seconded, all in favor?
Third.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody.
You show me yours.
That's just my response to.
May I have this?
Yeah.
What is
And you'll
Michelle's
see,
title? What's Michelle's title at the town?
Deputy.
She's deputy supervisor?
I'm with you 100%.
Oh,
I consider it
Are you sure?
a real treasure.
I'm like,
what's Nancy Taylor then?
It really is.
Nancy Taylor's deputy
All
supervisor.
We
I
all.
think so. I think Michelle has a,
I think so.
I don't know, I thought she was
I
deputy.
think she's some sort of like
Maybe she
treasurer,
was
but not
deputy?
treasurer. She was.
Okay. that's
But
what
now
I was
she's
thinking.
something.
Okay, I'm not sure, I have no idea.
Okay.
So we have.
No idea.
I was
Totally
like
out of the
watching
loop.
your face. You're so patiently like, Jessica, are you still talking and looking at me? Okay. All right. Thank you. So we're gonna get a link to the
You too.
CPCR.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, and then
People don't like the chiropractor?
I think that was really,
What about?
it sounded like I
People don't
asked
like
for
the
2 things, but it really was just that. Like if we just
Well,
linked
I don't know
there.
about not liking chiropractor, but
Nobody
not
didn't
liking what
Well, yeah,
was
but that's
done there.
Oh, I think it felt like I asked for 2 things.
You never noticed.
The other one was.
Oh,
really-
yeah, yeah.